the channel. I'm back to break down this 5-game MLB wildcard round DFS slate. Before we get into it, if you could please just leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you've been enjoying the content. It's something I always forget to say at the beginning of my videos. It's going to greatly help me. Please hit that like button, most importantly, hit that subscribe button. Before we get into it, I have released multiple MLB packages over there on Patreon. We can get access to things like my starting pitcher data sheet, my hot hitter stat guys data, my team hitting data, my bullpen data, my power rankings, and my cheat sheet. So go ahead and check that out if interested in getting some extra content from me. You can follow me over on Twitter at KJK _DFS. And with that being said, let's go ahead and start breaking down this slate today. So, as always, the first thing I like to do is start my sheet by strikeout. It's fantasy sports, strikeout rate, I should say. It's fantasy sports. We get points for strikeouts. And the guy that tops the slate, and no doubt the top pitcher of the slate, is that Yu Darvish taking on these Miami Marlins. He's been absolutely dominant all year. Comes with a 30.7% K rate, a 13.3 swing strike rate. Ground ball, the fly ball stuff looks really good. The walk rate, the hard hit rate, he's just solid all the way across the board. He's got a 36.2% K rate against right-handed hitting and then a 26% K rate against lefties. So he does excel significantly more in the strikeout category against right-handed hitting. So we do prefer to target him against right-handed heavy lineups, if at all possible. When looking at this Miami Marlins team that he's taken on today, they're definitely going to supply him with a lot of righties. So he's 11K on DraftKings, but he's well worth the price because when you're looking at the matchup and Yu Darvish stuff, he's definitely going to go out there and get the job done for you. Top option on the slate, Yu Darvish. Next on the list is that Ian Anderson. Young kid's really made a good first impression this year. He's got a 32 innings pitch sample size. He's got a 29.7% K rate, 11.9 swing strike rate. The ground ball, the fly ball stuff's very good. The only issue he has is walk rate, but we can live with that when we're looking at the rest of his stuff. He's got a 22.4% K rate against right-handed hitting and then a 36.6% K rate against lefties. So while he is a right-handed pitcher, he actually really does excel against left-handed hitting in the strikeout category. So we're not going to be mad if he's facing off against a few lefties. And that is the case when he's taking on this Cincinnati Reds team. You know, they do have quite a few lefties in there, quite a few righties. It's a nice little blend for him today. So Ian Anderson, definitely a good option on today's slate. 9.6K. Got to consider him. And then specifically when looking at my team hitting data sheet and figuring out, you know, how these teams fare in the strikeout category. If we go to the Reds, you can see they have a 24.7% K rate, so, you know, there's definitely some strikeouts in that lineup, so you have to factor that in as well. And then when you're factoring in Yu Darvish's matchup against the Marlins, they have a 25.1. And when looking at both of these teams' numbers against right-handed pitching, which they're both facing a right-handed pitcher, you can see the Marlins have a 25.4% K rate, and the Reds have a 24.7. So they're both red and orange on my sheet, which is comparing them against the rest of the league in strikeout rate. And, you know, being that we're in the playoffs and it's the best of the best, that stands out even more. These teams have some high strikeout rates. So, like those guys. Brandon Woodruff, taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers. Not a good matchup. You're going to get him low owned, so he's definitely got to consider for tournaments. He's got a 29.2% K rate, 28.6% K rate to righties, and then a 29.8% K rate to lefties. Just really solid across the board. The ground ball, the fly ball stuff, all that. He gets the job done. And he's taking on a Los Angeles Dodgers team today, who's not the most ideal matchup. You know, obviously the Dodgers lineup is absolutely stacked. But with that being said, we could definitely go ahead and get him at some low ownership. He comes in at 9.6K. And I definitely think this is a good spot. I mean, I've said it multiple times, but for ownership, target the guy against one of the best lineups in the league. You're going to get him low owned. If he goes out there and dominates, you could be looking real good in tournament. So, something to keep in mind there. His numbers look very impressive. And then, you know, I don't want to go on and on, but we do have two more options in Louis Castillo and Clayton Kershaw on the high side. Louis Castillo taking on the Atlanta Braves, not an ideal matchup, 27% K rate, a 27.7 K rate against righties, and then a 26.2% K rate against lefties. He does have some hard contact issues. We'll get into, you know, how we want to target these pitchers when we get to bats, because we're obviously going to have to target some good pitching against the playoffs. But Luis Castillo definitely up there today for your options. I mean, I would definitely prioritize paying up for Yu Darvish over Luis Castillo today, but both guys to have interest in. Next is Clayton Kershaw taking on these Milwaukee Brewers. And when looking at my team hitting data sheet, you can see that the Brewers are second to last in the league this year in strikeout rate, you know, right next to the Tigers. Against right-handed pitching, they have a 26.7% K rate, and then against lefties, it does drop down to a 24.5, and they do have some slugging abilities against lefties. So it's not quite as good as we have had in some of these matchups taking on the Milwaukee Brewers, because I was really high on Milwaukee Brewers last night. I've been really high on pretty much everyone that faces this Milwaukee Brewers team because they do have the strikeouts there, but when you're factoring in their numbers against lefties, it does dip down a little bit. So I just want to point that out to anyone that's been watching my videos. While I like targeting the Brewers a lot, it's not quite as appealing with the left-hander on the mound, but he's got a 25.7% K rate overall, 26.1% K rate against righties, and then a 24.6% K rate against lefties. So Kershaw actually does, excel more in the strikeout rate against right-handed hitting, and he's definitely going to have to do so today to get on the Brewers, who are going to load this lineup up with some righties that crush. So, Garcia, Braun, Jerko, Arcia, Castillo, Luis Urias, and Jacob Nottingham. Those are the guys that are going to be in the lineup most likely. Kershaw is definitely a viable option. And honestly, that's when my interest starts to fade. I probably wouldn't play any of the rest of these guys. The one guy I probably would play, and it's risky, is Dane Dunning. And he's actually 10.4K on DraftKings today. So the reason I say it's risky is he's just such a young kid. He doesn't quite have that veteran playoff presence. I mean, it's a little bit of a different playoffs this year with no fans and such, but the pressure's still on. He's got a 24.6% K rate overall. The swing strike rate looks good. The ground ball, the fly ball stuff's good. He's got a 26.8% K rate against righties and then a 22.5% K rate against lefties. So he's been really good against right-handed hitting. We need him in right-handed heavy matchups to even make him a viable play. And then when you factor in that he's priced up as much as he is, we definitely need him in a right-handed heavy matchup. And the Oakland A's definitely are a right-handed heavy team. They definitely are a right-handed heavy team. So that's going to help us out there. But he does have a few lefties in there, and he's 10.4K, which is just really tough pill to swallow when you could pay for a guy like Ian Anderson or Luis Castillo or Yu Darvish in the same type of range. So, or even a Clayton Kershaw or a Brandon Woodruff. So he's a guy we have to mention real quick, but I don't know if I go there. And with that being said, let's go ahead and transition into bats, figure out some bats that we're going to play today. We're talking about all these great things these pitchers have to offer, but we have to look at some downside or, the worst pitchers on the slate. And the worst pitcher on the slate is definitely that in Zach Davies. When you're looking across the board at his ground ball, his fly ball, his walk, his hard hit rate, his K rate, all that stuff, he's definitely worse on the slate. And when specifically looking at his splits, he does give up a 418 slugging to righties and then a 397 slugging to lefties. So he's actually been, more effective to left-handed hitting. However, I will say it's pretty mediocre across the board, and he's definitely worse on the slate in Sierra. So when looking at the St. Louis Cardinals today, they only have a 3.75 implied run total, but we can definitely target some of these guys in the middle of the order, the guys with the power. So Paul Goldschmidt had a home run yesterday. I was a promoter of him on the big stage, and I think you go right back to him. You got Dylan Carlson, Yadier Molina, Paul DeJong, Tommy Edman, Colton Wong. All those guys I think are viable taking on Zach Davies because, clearly his numbers are not as good as these other guys. And I do think that these guys are viable options today. Viable stacks, St. Louis Cardinals. Next on the list is Mike Fiers taking on the Chicago White Sox. Once again, a lot of red going on across my sheet. The ground ball and the fly ball stuff really stands out as being bad. His hard hit rate's bad. Against righties, he gives up a 454 slugging. Ground ball, fly ball, WOBA, hard hit rate, all bad. And then against lefties, it's the same sort of deal. So I'm going to be very, very high on the Chicago White Sox today. When you're looking at the 454 slugging to righties, I'm going to be very high on the righties. That mash, and that's pretty much this Chicago White Sox lineup MO. That's what they do. They have right-handed hitters that mash. So you got Tim Anderson. I like Yohan Moncada and Yasmani Grandal. Even though they're hitting from the left-handed side of the plate, I think I made it clear, that those guys can still mash. Jose Abreu, Edwin Encarnacion, Luis Robert. I have a lot of interest in that range. And then Adam Engel, Luis Garcia, and Nick Magical you can look at for salary relief. But, that's the only reason I would use them, salary relief. And then you also get exposure to this lineup, which I am expecting to perform well. And then you throw in the fact that it's 92 degrees in Oakland. And, that's a lot better hitting conditions than some of the other places we're discussing. So I do like the Chicago White Sox a ton today. Next on the list is Adam Wainwright to target, taking on the San Diego Padres. I do think the Padres, you can definitely target him here. The string strike rate's down against righties. He does a pretty good job of the hard contact. I mean, the ground ball and the fly ball stuff, but the hard contact and the slugging stands out as being relatively bad compared to other pitchers on the slate. And then it's the lefties that really get him. He's got a .459 slugging given up to left-handed hitting. I'm going to have a ton of interest in any lefties taking on Adam Wainwright. And the Padres definitely have some left-handed hitting with some power. So you got Trent Grisham, Eric Hosmer, Mitch Moreland, Jason Castro, Jake Cronenworth. Those are the guys I'm really looking to target because they're hitting from the left-hand side of the plate, and they do have a ton of power. And then you could throw in, a Tatis, Machado, Will Myers, and these guys to round up your stacks for sure because, if the lefties are able to get to them early, then they get to go to the bullpen. I will mention that the Cardinals do have a pretty good bullpen. When looking at my bullpen data sheet, if we go to the Cardinals, you're going to see, to be honest with you, they've dropped a lot since the beginning of the season. So they're a team that I was promoting as, up there as a bullpen, but their statistics have gotten significantly worse. So I'm going to kind of go back on my word on that because when looking at my sheet and breaking it down, they are very good in the BABIP category, the batting average on balls put in play, so that might factor into how good their stats were early on in the season because you can see a 242 is very green on my sheet, meaning that they're catching a lot of breaks on these balls put in play with the hard hit rate and the stuff, the exit velocity, the xFIP isn't looking the greatest actually. So take that for what you will. Seems like they've been getting a little lucky, so I'll retract my breakdown there as far as them being bad, are good. So that just increases the appeal even more for the Padres, I think. If we can catch a bullpen that's been a little bit on the downfall, perfect. So yeah, I definitely like the Padres. And then this is when things get a little interesting because the hard hit rate stuff and all that stuff's looking pretty good from here on out. So if you watched my playoff videos that I've been producing, you'll know I do look at the splits. I try to figure out which hitters we can target against which pitchers as far as, splits are concerned. And the only guy that I would say really stands out to target the righties against as far as splits would be Sixto Sanchez taking on the Chicago Cubbies. He's got a 400 slugging given up, a 329 WOBA. The rest of this stuff's pretty good, but the slugging and the WOBA, definitely show some promise of us being able to target right-handed hitters against him. They are playing in Chicago where the wind's blowing out at 17 miles an hour, so that helps us for bats. And, the bats that applies to would be Chris Bryant, Wilson Contreras, and Javi Baez. So I definitely have some interest in them today. Sneaky plays taking on Sixto Sanchez. They won't grab a lot of ownership, and the slugging and the WOBA does back it up to target him. And then moving further along, against lefties, we had already discussed Adam Wainwright's struggles. He has a 459 slugging. That's not good. One guy we did not touch on is Dane Dunning. Against left-handed hitting, you can see he does have a 393 slugging, a 33.3 hard hit rate. The WOBA, the fly ball, the ground ball stuff's all been very bad. He's been struggling against left-handed hitting. So I definitely have interest in some of these athletics lefties. Most notably Matt Olson, the guy with a ton of power. You got Tommy Listell at the top of the order, Robbie Grossman. Jake Lamb has a ton of power as well. So I definitely would recommend targeting those lefties today. Like those guys. And then we do have a couple more. The next one being Luis Castillo taking on these Atlanta Braves. When you're looking at Luis Castillo's numbers against lefties, he gives a 444 slugging, a 39.4% hard hit rate. The WOBA was at a 331, not good. And once again, I think it's a sneaky option because people aren't going to be wanting to target Luis Castillo. But when you're targeting him, you're going to want to target him with the lefties. So Freddie Freeman, Ozzie Albies, Nick Markakis. Throw those guys in your lineups, feel good about it. Preferably Freddie Freeman. He's the premier bat in this lineup. And then that's when things pretty much expire. However, I will say the one last spot I will mention that could be sneaky is targeting Yu Darvish with some lefties. Yu Darvish is definitely going to be the top-owned pitcher on the slate, in my opinion. A ton of people are going to have him, and he does have a 431 slugging given up against lefties. I mean, the rest of the stuff he's very, very good in. It's Yu Darvish. You know what we're getting with him. But if we're looking to get sneaky and we're looking to win those big dollar totals in the top of these tournaments, you're going to want to throw in guys like Corey Dickerson and Matt Joyce, the guys that are lefties, the guys with a little bit of power, and taking on Yu Darvish and his splits issues. I wouldn't even call them splits issues, but that's the one spot he shows a little bit of a weakness in, is the slugging against lefties. So you can definitely throw them in and feel pretty good about that and be a little sneaky. So before I let you guys go, I do have to give you my home run call of the day. We nailed it the first show in the playoffs with Jose Abreu. Last night I was all over Anthony Rizzo. Unfortunately, he didn't really show up for us. So we're looking to get back on track here. And then as always, I like to go ahead and go back to the data and just point out, why I'm picking who I'm picking to hit a home run, and, some reasoning to back it up. And when we're looking at the numbers, I think it's very clear that I made it clear I'm very interested in targeting these right-handed power bats for the Chicago White Sox. And when you're looking at Fire's numbers, he gives up, a 40% ground ball rate, a 40.6% fly ball rate, the WOBA, the hard hit rate, the slugging is a 454. All that stuff's just really, really bad when you're factoring in who he's being compared to in these playoffs. That really stands out as being poor. And I'm definitely going to have interest in these right-handed bats for the Chicago White Sox. And I don't really think I can help myself from just being all in on Jose Abreu again. This is something I don't typically do. If you've been tuning into my shows all season, I try to mix it up, not go back to the same guys over and over again. But it is the MLB playoffs. We're seeing the best of the best. And we have to pick spots where, we're going to get production. And I think you're going to get production again out of Jose Abreu in that 4th spot. I think he's my guy. I have interest in every single one of these righties. But when you factor in where he hits in the lineup, you factor in how hot he's been all season, opening up my hot hitter Statcast data tool that I've created over there on Patreon. When you're looking at, the hottest hitters in the league, this is the color-coded data sheet that breaks down the hottest hitters in the league, and Jose Abreu is all green. These are the top 100 hitters in the league. As I'm scrolling down, all these guys have been hot as well, but the green are just the hottest of the hot, and Jose Abreu definitely stands out. When looking at, he's got a 92.5 exit velocity, a 114 max exit velocity, 22 barrels, 13.7% barrel percentage. He has 83 hard hits, very impressive, and then a 51.6% hard hit rate. So you factor in the matchup, you factor in Jose Abreu's hitting ability, you factor in how hot he's been, and he is my home run call of the day. Love Jose Abreu today. And that is all from me today, guys. Please, if you're enjoying the content, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe to the channel. It's going to help me out a ton. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I wish you all the best of luck tonight, and have a good one.